Hey folks, it's Pravus. A very good morning to you and a happy 2024. It's been a little while since I last did a face-to-face video with you guys, so I kind of thought, now that 2023 is officially behind us, now is the perfect opportunity to talk a little bit about last year, some major life events, kind of how things went from a YouTube perspective, and also just talk about where the channel is going to be going in 2024. So on a personal level, 2023 was obviously a very huge year. The biggest and most obvious change being this little man right here. So my son is now about 7.5 months old, and you can see he's gotten a lot bigger since the last time he was on camera. Filling out nicely. He is a happy, healthy boy. Not talking or crawling quite yet, but he is now at an age where he's starting to discover that he has a will of his own, and he will loudly proclaim that will. So, that's been fun. I do enjoy being a dad quite a lot, though. This little guy is a lot of work. I'm losing a lot of sleep, I'm losing a lot of energy, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. It's really cool watching him discover the world. And every little tiny thing that we think is so mundane is so exciting to him. Ain't that right, bud? You see the screen? You see yourself on screen? What is that? Who is that? Tremendously fun. Honestly, I didn't really think I was going to enjoy this as much as I have. You got a screaming poop bag of a baby for the first couple years, right? I'm like, this is going to suck until he's able to talk. No, I'm actually really enjoying this. I like being a dad. It's quite fun. Another major life event technically happened at the end of 2022, but really only took effect at the beginning of 2023, and that is I got a promotion at my full-time job. I am now a manager of my engineering team, which has been very different from what I was used to. I still get to do a lot of my own personal work in engineering as well, but now I also have to lead a team and make sure that I'm taking care of them the best I can. And it's been fun, honestly. It's kind of revitalized a lot of what I loved about the company I work for and the work that I've been doing. Now I get to actually help challenge people and help them grow to be a lot better as engineers, and I have a whole new set of responsibilities. So it's been a very fun change of pace, and I'm looking to build onto that into 2024. Hi, little boy, I hear you. Other than that, life has more or less been chugging along as usual. So let's circle back to YouTube, because obviously this is the thing that most affects you guys. 2023 was an interesting year. It had its ups and it had its downs. I'd say it's been one of the rockier years the channel has had in recent history, but it kind of makes sense when you think about it. So from a views perspective, it's been all over the place. I mean, for the most part, I'd say that it's been about on average with the past couple of years. Not the worst, not the best. I've tried experimenting with some different types of content, different kinds of videos, more standalone videos, less series. But I also had to draw back on the number of videos I produced per week by a lot now that the baby has been born, and it really has kind of shown, and that's been hurting my bottom line quite a lot. Nonetheless, it's kind of what I have to work with. Also in 2023, I would say there weren't any really big game-changing events that happened in the gaming industry, at least that would affect my channel. There's some great games that released out there. Baldur's Gate 3, phenomenal game, would do terribly on the channel. Starfield, hated that game, would do terribly on the channel, right? These are things I can't capitalize on. So if you think about my particular niche, not a lot of new content happening, which is why I'm circling back around to some old favorites right now, and you're gonna be seeing more of that in the next few weeks. Because I'm kind of scraping the barrel at least until some new stuff starts to come out. The good news is 2024 is looking very promising. You got games like Frostpunk 2, you got games like Manor Lords, etc. Some really big things that I've been looking forward to for years now. And they're all coming due kind of in the first or second quarter of the year. So this is going to be a good year for me, I hope. The thing that's been really weird and rocky this year has actually been the ad revenue that I kind of depend on for a living, right? Weirdly enough, this year started off really, really strong. Like normally after December and the Christmas rush and everything else, ad revenue drops off a cliff. This year actually started off really good and stayed good for a while, at least for me. Until about the birth of my son, when I then took, a month off of YouTube, and then the YouTube algorithm just kind of threw me off a cliff and has never really picked it back up. And then you factor in that the US, at least, has not yet had the full-on recession that we've all kind of expected, but everyone's still planning for it, so ad revenue never really picked back up. Everyone kind of spent everything they had last year for Christmas, and then it dropped off, and it still isn't going anywhere because everyone's holding on to money. They're not going hard on the marketing budgets. And I'm not the only one who's noticed this. I've talked to quite a few other YouTubers, and they're finding that, for example, this December is significantly worse than it was last year. So what I'm going to show you here is a quick chart here that just goes over a little bit of kind of how things looked, so you can get a sense of like how it started off really high and then kind of dropped down really badly. And you can see around, August, September, October, things were looking Truly awful, if I'm honest. It got to a point where it's like, the number of hours I am putting into YouTube no longer makes sense. If this is how things are going to be from here on out, I may need to consider retiring from YouTube. The good news is, things did bounce back starting in November, and I'm hoping that, around the Thanksgiving, December, things are going to look good, and maybe they stay up there again. Also, the only saving grace that I had is I picked up some extra sponsorship videos around September and October in particular, and you can see here from this updated chart that it did kind of even things out substantially. So that's the only reason things ended up working out all right for me. We ended up averaging out fairly strong. I'd say this year was only a little bit worse than last year, but overall, still pretty decent. So I'm happy with how things turned out. But it does show that there is, one, room for improvement on my end to make sure that the views stay nice and high and we don't run into this issue. And two, it really points out some changes that are going to need to be made in order to try and get some stability on the channel, especially from a revenue perspective. I mean, as I've said before, YouTube views and ad revenue are always a bit of a crapshoot, right? Some videos will do phenomenally well that you never expected, like, let's say, Micro-Civilization. Didn't see that happening, but there we go, that video did great. And then some things are going to do terribly that you thought should do really well, and maybe you put a lot of time into it, and it's actually very frustrating and disappointing, but, you step outside your niche too far, you're going to get bonked. And then ad revenue, it's just purely about the economy, stupid. There's nothing you can do about it. So what that means is I need to focus on a few different things. One, from a views perspective, I really need to be more careful about committing to series content and where I need to change up my format. So let me give you an example of this. EU4, a game that I absolutely love and I have played for a long time. I did an Austria campaign earlier this year. It was, I think, the best campaign I've ever done on EU4. Did not do great from a views perspective, always fell below average, partly because it was a slightly longer series, though even then I kept things clipping along at a pretty good rate. So that tells me that EU4 probably not going to be that big of a bread and butter thing for me going forward. And then you see that I did a video for the release of the new DLC where I discovered a new Empire attack that no one talked about in the dev diaries. I'm pretty sure I was the world first to discover Eren Shar and the Zoroastrian Empire that was there. And that was a totally different format. That followed the more meta YouTube perspective of, you do one video, you make it as memey as possible, you clip things along, 20, 25 minutes, that is it, as much of a campaign as you can do. And that video actually did end up doing pretty well, so what that tells me is if I'm going to do something like EU4 in the future, it can't be a series. People just don't stick around for series. Some people can do that if that is the only game you ever play, but I'm a variety channel. People don't do that, so I have to have a different format. That's something I'm going to try to learn in 2024. I'll have to do a bit more experimentation. Some things will work, some things won't. That's fine. We just gotta learn. I'm also looking to make some major changes from an editing perspective to free up some time. Not necessarily a big style change, that might come later, but mostly I need to free up time so that I can focus on creating the content and let someone else do a bit of the editing work. So I'm happy to announce that starting today, I have hired my wife as my new editor. She was actually already looking at like a part-time job. She feels like she needs some sort of a purpose, something to do outside of the baby because she's going stir crazy, and let's be honest, she's been a saint about the whole thing. But I said, you could just join the family business. There's a need there. And then the two of us hopefully make each other better and we add more value to the business and it just grows from there. And she's like, that sounds awesome. So I'm going to be teaching her some of the software over the next month. And then I'm going to gradually hand things off to her. And if she's willing to continue doing this, she will end up being my full-time editor. So everyone, welcome in Yali officially to the Pravus Gaming Company. I'm excited about that. I think it could be good. And then over time, she'll probably start adding a bit more of her own personal flair, some commentary, maybe a little bit of witty comments and remarks and editor's notes. We'll see. It could be fun. And then from a revenue perspective, I'm gonna have to start pushing Patreon. It's not something I've literally ever advertised for myself, except for the occasional series where I show off a person's name as a patron to the channel, but I need insulation from the volatility that has been the ad revenue. And direct help from people like you guys is kind of the best way that I can do that. Otherwise, it's all luck of the draw. Some months are gonna be good, some months I have sponsorships, but there's no consistency, none whatsoever, and I have a kid I gotta take care of. So I'm gonna be revamping Patreon. I'm still currently processing through a lot of different ideas on different benefits I can add. I'm gonna have to go to that Patreon page and finally get it updated. There's a lot I need to change. I'm probably gonna retire the $1 patron tier entirely because at this point, with the amount that Patreon takes out of it, I'm getting very little out of that arrangement in the first place. So expect some changes there. Expect to see either some pop-ups in the video saying you can support me on Patreon or me talking a bit about it, and maybe just trying to find some really good other benefits to entice people in there. We'll talk more about that in the future. You'll see more of that. Just be aware that's a thing that's going to happen, and that's why. Because as you saw from that chart, yeah, ad revenue, it can absolutely screw you. It's frustrating, honestly, because I had actually just been talking to my wife early in this year. Maybe I should quit my engineering job and just do this full time. And then you run into things like August, September, and October. Nope. Bad idea. I think you'll also continue to see some various different sponsored games and stuff on the channel. I'm still not quite willing to take the plunge to accept integrated ads. No Raid Shadow Legends, no Roar Thunder. I hate those personally, but I understand why YouTubers do it. Because if I did that, I actually could totally retire from my engineering job and just do YouTube. I get enough offers, I can make that a living. I just, out of principle, don't like them. So I'm trying really hard to avoid that, but sponsored games themselves, now that's something I'm willing to consider. And I do carefully curate a lot of the games that I'm going to accept, at least the best that I'm able to. Some games are a little bit of a deviation from my niche, you guys have noticed things like that, but I generally think that they're gonna look like pretty good games, and then other things are obvious fits for the channel, you know, and that's kind of what I always do. I never want to waste your time with sponsored games. If I'm going to accept that, it has to add value, I have to educate you in some way, or make you entertained in some other way. So just trust that I'm gonna continue doing that. My principles have not changed. But, as again you saw from September and October, they can be lifesavers for your income, so I'm gonna have to accept a few more of those, I think. The last thing that I probably should address from a state of the channel perspective is actually the subscriber count itself. We actually hit 600,000 at the very beginning of 2023, and then it really hasn't grown an absolute ton. This has been the slowest year in growth for the last like 4 years. Now that's not unexpected, right? Because we're getting to a high subscriber count and it's gonna start to peak a little bit without having some major changes in my content style or another big runaway success like Plague Inc. was a few years ago, right? So I'm not surprised by that. It hasn't gone down, that's a good news. But obviously I would like to continue trying to grow. So if you guys have any ideas on ways that I can try to reach out to different niches, different audiences, and still not lose myself in what makes me me and what makes this channel fun, I'm certainly open to some suggestions. Otherwise, don't be surprised if I continue trying to explore different niches and genres on occasion, something outside of the norm. Some will be successful, some will not. That's just how it's gonna be, but I've gotta always be looking for the future and how the channel continues to grow. The second you stagnate, that's when I stop having fun. I think that about wraps things up though. So in summary, 2023, from a YouTube perspective, rough, weird, kind of volatile, goes all over the place. We had some awesome successes, and we had some spectacular failures. Oh well, that's how it is. But we'll continue building on what we've learned into 2024, and there's gonna be some changes to try and build more stability and consistency into my content style and in my revenue. And then obviously on a personal level, oh boy, was 2023 a big year. But honestly, it's been a very exciting year. I have had a heck of a lot of fun as a new dad, as a manager. Life's looking pretty good. I'm looking forward to seeing what 2024 is going to bring. Thank you all for your continued support, watching this channel and supporting me on a personal level. I love you all very much, and I look forward to continuing entertaining you for the foreseeable future. Take care, everyone. Enjoy your New Year's.